What's up guys, Joey here. I've been testing the latest drivers. As you know, RSR has just dropped for the Radeon 5000 and up series GPUs, and I'm running a 6700 XT. Now, I'm testing an Elden Ring because, you know, it's a popular game at the moment, and if I uncap the FPS, you can see here on my native resolution of 3440 by 1440 with all high settings, I'm getting 62 FPS in this particular spot in the game, which is a fairly intensive area. Lernia Lakeshore. And if I turn around and face the water, you can see that it even drops to 58 FPS. So it drops under, but you know, around 60. It's pretty good. It's not bad. And you can just see how crisp the game looks. Now this is with Reshade, so I'm going to disable Reshade. So you can just see it goes a little bit lighter. The fog is more prominent, and the detail in the trees kind of gets hazy. I don't really like the look of the native game. I much prefer Reshade. You can see the colors, the depth is much better of the shadows, especially on the trees. See the difference on and off? So this is Reshade on, Reshade off. Now this isn't a Reshade test, but just so you know, if you look at my image and you're thinking, why does it look a bit different? I'm just going to turn Reshade off so we've got the vanilla game for comparison. And it doesn't seem to make much of a difference on FPS. You can see I'm hovering around 61 FPS in this area. And just to show you my settings, everything high, volumetric low because I don't like it, and depth of field off. So it's still pretty good considering the performance of the game in 3440. Now to get RSR working, I actually had to check a couple of things. First, you need to install the latest drivers, 22.3.1, and then you need to run your game in full screen mode. And initially I tried copying the, it's got under here, under graphics, where it's got the Radeon Super Resolution switch. I enabled that, and it gives you a little tutorial of what to do. And it says start your game up and put the resolution under your native resolution. That's why I can't test this at 1440p for other people unless I mess with my monitor resolution and everything like that. But I figure better to go native for this one, because then I won't be able to tell the difference if I've got it on, you know, a smaller resolution. Now, then it says launch the game, and yeah, basically it'll detect it automatically. And apparently you can, so you set a low resolution for RSR to automatically enable as long as you've got it checked, but it should say upscale status active, and I could not find this active notification. There should be a green tick somewhere, and I couldn't see it under, you know, settings, graphics. There's no active here. And then going into the gaming tab, I went to Elden Ring. You know, that's what I'm testing, and there was another Radeon Super Resolution switch that was disabled. Maybe because I've already been running Elden Ring prior to activating RSR, but I had to enable it here, and then it still wasn't working. And what I finally figured out I had to do is, normally I don't run this, but under preferences, settings called preferences, it's got in-game overlay. And this is just preliminary testing, so maybe it's not the case for everyone, but I only got RSR functioning after enabling the in-game overlay. So when I enabled this, that's when the hotkey started working, and under hotkeys, there's actually an RSR hotkey, Alt-U, to turn it on and off. And that's how I realized, okay, it's working, even though I'm not getting a verified indicator anywhere. So it looks like the game crashed too, because I was messing with it too much. So we're going to boot it up again, and I'm just going to show you the difference RSR makes, and if it, you'll be able to just tell straight away if it's actually improving the image quality, if it's improving the performance, and if it's worth using, basically. Because this could also be a buying factor. You know, if you're thinking of buying a new GPU and you want RSR, because, you know, Elden Ring, I don't know if Elden Ring has DLSS support, but it doesn't have FSR support, and RSR is in the driver, so it doesn't matter what the game supports. RSR can function with the majority of games. So continue here, and we're still at my native resolution, and just keep in mind the FPS we're getting around 60 FPS. That's what we're getting around this area. If I face this way, 74 with uncapped FPS, 77, but we're going to face the water because that's a fairly easy way to get, like, we'll know if there's a performance increase from 60. So you can see that, and I'll swing it around after for 76. So 60 and 76 is roughly what we're, 78, 76, 78 is roughly what we're trying to beat. And we also want to just try to absorb image quality. You can probably skip back and forward in this video after it's uploaded, but try to take in the image quality that we're getting right now. And Oh, I'll disable the reshade. So you can see here up at the top, reshade is disabled. In the top left, it says page down to enable them again, and it has a little note there. So I'm going to keep reshade off because I don't want it to interfere with the image quality. Because reshade does have its own sharpening, and we don't want that improving the low resolution testing we're about to do. Okay, so now for RSR to work, what we got to do is go to a low resolution, and I'm on ultra wide, so we're going to go down to 2560 by 1080, which is basically lower res ultra wide instead of 1440p ultra wide, 1080p ultra wide. And after doing that, we should see a performance improvement, but RSR is, let's see if it's enabled or not. RSR is disabled right now. I've just turned it off using the hotkey. And with RSR disabled, we're on 81 FPS, but as you can see, the image quality is a little bit blurry, particularly if you pay attention to these leaves behind me over here. Just look at the leaves on the tree. This is with RSR off. And if I turn it on, just look at the leaves, you'll see the difference. That's with RSR on. The sharpness, everything comes back up. And now facing this direction, we're at 100 FPS. Facing back to the water, we're at 92 FPS with RSR on. And the image quality, I would say, is pretty darn good. I would be very happy to play like this, but then I'll enable my reshade to, you know, sharpen things even more. Maybe I don't need Fidelity FX, it's a filter, contrast filter. Maybe I don't need that anymore. But just the reshade to give that depth. But yeah, before we were getting around 60 FPS staring at this spot, and now it's at 74, and we've got our image detail. And if I disable RSR, you can just see the shield even gets blurry. The cape, if I go by the light, just look at the design on the back of his, on the back of my armor. If I disable RSR, it gets a little bit more pixelated, and mainly the leaves and the grass, you can tell the difference. So disabled, enabled, disabled, enabled, and you can just see, the that dragon design. You can just see it sharpen up and get really nice. It goes a little bit pixelated. Maybe most people might not even care at this resolution, but the difference is night and day for me when I'm actually focusing on the image quality as a whole. Everything just sharpens up. The shield, the back of the shield, the gauntlets I'm wearing, the glove armor, all the details just get sharpened up. Although it does seem a bit weird, the actual screen itself shrinks a little bit, so it's like the ultra-wide fix I'm using doesn't work properly with RSR, but that's to do with flawless ultra-wide, because this game does not natively support ultra-wide. Ignore that. We're just looking at the image quality as a whole and the frame rate. So back to reshade disabled. And yeah, definite improvement. Definite image quality improvement. Like, even if I just turn it on and off here, you can see the rocks getting a bit blurry. Look at that when I move the camera around, the foliage in the background, and the rocks here on the right on this little stone wall. And then I'll enable it again, and they get nice and crisp. And you can actually see the leaves over here fairly well. So in the bottom right corner of the screen, I'll disable RSR again. Disabled. And enabled. Disabled. Enabled. And look at the chain armor too. Disabled. Gets a bit blurrier. Enabled. It sharpens up. So it's almost like a sharpening filter. That's the way it comes across, but it is supposed to be upscaling. And yeah, I've been getting FPS drops and stutters at native resolution, and this is a really great solution, at least on a 6700 XT. It also brings my FPS up to a much higher level, where I would happily, you know, cap the FPS to 70 or 75 and have way less stutter compared to capping it to 60 or 55 just to smooth out the frame times. So if we just go back now to, I wonder if I can enable and disable it at native, but back to native, and I can't even tell the difference. Like, we're back at native now. And can I? No, the RSR switch is not doing anything anymore. I'm trying to spam it to see if it'll do anything. It's not. But back at native resolution, you can just see here, we're back now at this water. It's a bit weird, 67 FPS. It's like the FPS went up. 784. What is going on? Wait, did I set it back properly? What did I do? I don't know if it's something to do with RSR still upscaling. Like maybe it didn't even let me, like, because you know it's still fairly new. There could be bugs, but it seems like RSR is still running at 1080. What the settings I just had, even though I set it back to 3440 by 1440, I might have to manually go in and disable the RSR switch, because this is not the normal performance I get. If you look at all my benchmarks before this driver release, I get about 60 FPS in this area, about here. I do not get 66 FPS or 68 FPS, I get 60. So, oh, it could be the Reshade. Enabling Reshade seems to sharpen up. It's got a sharpening filter in it, which I disabled. It's got vibrance and fake HDR. So that could have been the 62 FPS. No, it's still only a few FPS difference. It's only 2 FPS at most. So no, I did turn it off for the testing. Sorry, I was getting myself confused, but I just wanted to show. Yeah, so now that I've like stared at the scene for long enough, it's gone down to 60. 79? It could just be the slight angle I have on the camera too. If I have it slightly high or slightly low, that can increase the FPS dramatically. Looking at the ground, obviously now I'm at 85 FPS. It might have just been that I'm not keeping it perfectly level. So if we try to level it with my feet, 63 FPS, 62 FPS, and then we go back to 2560 by 1080 and enable. It was already enabled, and now we're up at 81 FPS, which you can't argue with. I mean, look at that. So this is RSR now. And we'll save this one more time. You can just see the blur. It doesn't change the FPS because we're running at 2560 by 1080. It changes the clarity, the image clarity, you know, the rock structure in the background. When I enable it again, you can just see it all sharpen up straight away. The trees look very soft at this resolution without RSR, and then enabling it just brings them all back, brings the detail back. So we gained about 20 FPS from this, 62, 60-ish to 82. So I hope that helps you guys out. This is just really early testing. And yeah, back here at this scene that was 76, you can see here, like, Reshade's not on, and we're at 100 FPS now. We gained about 20 FPS as well, 30 FPS, facing this less intensive wall and Grace of Light. So maybe over here there's a lot more grass and stuff that has to be upscaled, and more aliasing to deal with. Just double check none of my settings have changed. No, it's all still high. And looking at this scene, we're at 96 FPS, and then if I won't move the camera, we'll go back to native 3440 by 1440, and you also try to spot if there's any quality improvements. Do you notice that it looks much better, or it looks about the same? And now we're down at 79 FPS. Yeah, 80. We'll just say at 80 FPS. It's 80 FPS in this scene. And then 2560 by 1080. And we gain 97. So yeah, about almost 20 FPS, 17 FPS or so. 16, 17 FPS. That's pretty good. And I'll just disable RSR just so you can see the difference. If I disable it, you can see the entire, all the grass off in the distance just gets blurred. Disabled. And it's shimmering a lot. And then enabled, and it's still shimmering a tiny bit, but it does that anyway. It's to do with the shadowing in this game. It does it even at native. But yeah, all the foliage got sharpened up. Even the flowers closer to us sharpened up. And I'm turning it on and off. If you notice it changing, like the quality changing, it's just me pressing the button. You can probably hear me pressing the button. So off, on, off, on, off, on. But for me, the most profound difference is just around these leaves and stuff. So you can just see the leaves, these plants here. We'll just stand in the plants, and you'll see the plants get blurry. Off, on, off, on. So pay attention to the leaves over here where I put the mouse. Just look at the detail in the leaves. Off, on, off, on. You can just see the texture in the leaves really sharpens up. So off, on, off, on. Anyway, it's not massive, but for me, it's noticeable on my monitor at this resolution. I can see the detail changes. It might be a bit harder to tell on a smaller monitor at a lower resolution in the first place, but you can watch this video in 4K, and even on a 1080p monitor, you can tell the quality difference of a 4K video. So, you know, we'll take one more look at the shield design here. Off, on, off, on. And for me, I can see it blurring and coming back. Blurring and sharpening again. Off, on. So there you go, guys. That's a quick FSR test. I'm very happy with the performance, especially since, you know, it costs nothing for AMD 5000 plus owners. And now I can enjoy playing at basically higher FPS for free. We'll try some combat here, see if there's any weird artifacting or anything like that to do with, oh, he hit me. My +8 halberd. And just in motion, I want to see if there's any, like, weird ghosting or... Nope. And I'll disable it again. It actually doesn't look too bad at 2x1080, to be honest. Like, the image is a bit softer, but even at this low resolution, given the performance boost, the game still looks pretty darn good. Don't hit me. These don't hit that hard, like, maybe because I'm level 50, but... So this is with RSR off, again, just for anyone wondering. It's off there right now, just so you can see the native ultra-wide 1080p detail. And then, I'm just noticing it when I walk. Like, I can see stuff blurring in the background that just looks low-res. And then when I have RSR on, this rock pillar just sharpens right up. I'll even go right up close and turn it on and off, so... Off, on, off, on. Yeah, you can really see the texture quality improvement when you stare at it. Block that? Maybe. Yeah, this is my level 54 something. I don't know what to call him. He's not really any particular build. I got a moon veil and I'm trying to work my intelligence up to use it. But my main weapon is just a +8 halberd I got from a quest where you're the NPC is supposed to attack you later on, but I killed him when he was still friendly, and it just gave me a +8 halberd really early into the game. Okay, now, just as a last bit, because this video is going a bit longer than I intended, like, I am being a bit repetitive because I wanted to show more than one scene. Off, on, off. 1, 2. On. Off. On. So a bit of off-oning. And what else? Maybe just at this light angle where you can just see a little bit more everything. Off. On. See my shield really good here too. Off. It's a subtle difference on the shield, but on. I can tell. So that's cool. And now I'm going to show you my Reshade, which really, like, for me it's a nightmare. It's even a bigger difference in RSR. Like, if I disable RSR, but I turn this on and off, this is a bigger difference for me artistically. The depth to everything, it just looks darker, it looks... The colors are just better, the contrast, everything. And that is Reshade, and all I'm using in Reshade is Vibrance FX. If anyone's curious, I'm just going to quickly share my settings, because I know there's some people using Reshade out there. Vibrance FX at 1.3, you can see my settings here, and Fake HDR at 1.3. Are they both at 1.3? Yeah, Fake HDR at 1.3 and Vibrance FX at 0.150, sorry. You can see the two settings here. That's all I'm using. Like, I was using contrast adaptive sharpening, but I noticed stutter, especially when using it with RSR, but it also sharpens up the image a little bit in a similar fashion, actually, to RSR. So you can see here the blurring in the trees in the rock. If I turn that on, it sharpens them up too. But then if I turn RSR on, it sharpens it up even further, and then it gets over sharpened. So you can see. So you can just see here my armor and everything looks really, really sharp now, and the rocks, everything's just a little bit too sharp. And then so keeping that off and just relying on the RSR softens the image a tiny bit. Tiny bit. But one thing I'm curious about is I could take a look at the FPS. It's on 84 FPS, and then if I enable that, there's no FPS hit. What if I disable RSR 85 FPS? So just using the Reshade adaptive sharpening instead. Actually sharpen up the trees and everything a bit more. But I'm just testing something. I do this like off camera all the time. So Reshade sharpening with this angle, 80 FPS, 79 80, 79 80, and then disable the adaptive sharpening and turn on RSR again. It's about the same. I guess actually, if anyone stuck around this long, if you have an older card that does not support RSR, you could install Reshade and look for a Reshade plugin for AMD Fidelity FX contrast adaptive sharpening, and use that and just lower your resolution to, you know, half your resolution or a lower resolution than native. So for 1440p you might try 1080p. For ultra wide, go from, you know, 1440 to 1080 and enable that instead, because you don't have RSR, and it does a similar effect. It sharpens up the image, even if that's not exactly even if they're using a slightly different technology and this is more of a filter, it's having a similar effect in my eyes. So that's another alternative just for those of you that are missing out. Find these plugins. I just downloaded there's Cinematic Experience. This was on Nexus Mods, and it was a Reshade package, and I ended up just deleting everything because I didn't actually like the Cinematic Experience, and I just kept the ones that I felt made the most difference, and that was Vibrance, HDR, and the adaptive sharpening. So even just with Reshade and no RSR, there is it's still making a noticeable performance boost and improving the image quality a lot. But I'd say RSR is a tiny little bit better. Like if you have support for it and you don't have to use Reshade at all, then obviously RSR is the way to go. So that's Reshade, and RSR off, RSR at 1. But yeah, I'm definitely happy with the performance. I mean, I'm getting a solid 60 FPS plus, where I was dropping into the 50s before. And wait, this guy's chasing me. Go away. Go away, go away, go away. I'm not ready to fight. Ah. Jeez. How do I dodge these? Oh, I missed. Sad. Wait, I'll try to get this guy. We'll see. Come here, come here. Come here, dude. Here, my spin. But yeah, if I just play a bit and focus on the gameplay, I can't even tell I'm running at a lower resolution with these settings. So that is one way to boost your FPS. One really good way. And what we'll do now is I will go back to native just so you can see, like if I go through the same scene, combat-wise. and I'm gonna keep my Reshade running, and you can just see now I'm down to 60 FPS, and as soon as I get in a bit of combat and some stuff starts happening, even just running, maybe. Over here there was some enemies, but I'll ride and find some enemies, but you'll see me dipping under 60. And we were getting like a solid 68, 65 plus before. Yeah, see over here, 58 FPS. Just reset the counter. When I'm looking down, the FPS goes up. I need to kind of keep it a bit more steady. What's that over there? Is that a thing? Oh, no, it's just a tree log. I thought there was like some creature over here. Thorny swamp creature, and it's a tree log. Wait, who's ringing a bell at me? Up on the thing. Oh yeah, we'll go back to 1080p now. And just make sure RSR is on. And just look at that FPS now. Hey. This. Oh, come on. Oh, I've killed that thing. It comes back? It respawns? No. I don't want to fight it again. Ah, I got hit by a beam. Anyway, guys, you can see the difference, and yeah, I'm going to get back to my normal playthrough that I'm doing for Elden Ring in ultra-wide, and hope this video helps you guys out, just having that question of whether RSR is actually useful or not, or alternative to RSR, which is obviously Reshade, with the adaptive sharpen filter. And yeah, if you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye!